Hello, Peds, and welcome to another edition of Spider-Man, the animated series podcast. I'm your host, Alex Robson, and with me, as always, is my co-host, my brother, Marvel, IDW, and image artist, along with being an all-around friendly neighborhood guy, Mr. Will Robson. Say hello, Will.
And Boom. I've done something for Boom as well.
Oh, sorry, I changed it. I changed the title and add more, and you still are like, and Boom. All right.
Yeah,
and
I've been doing a lot for Boom, all those Big Trouble covers and everything. Anyway, hello, everybody.
Hello. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm just inking away. It's sunny outside, and I kind of want to be outside right now, but it's not warm enough yet.
No, it looks nice, and then you go outside, and you're like, oh, I should have put that jacket on. I really love talking about the weather already.
Well, we are English. That's what we do.
That's true. Any moment of silence.
The amount of bloody strangers I meet on the street where you're just forced to have a conversation, like if you're waiting for something with a stranger, or, you know, when you're forced to make conversation with a stranger, it's always the fucking weather. It's like, oh, it's a bit cold, isn't it? It's like, yeah, well, I heard it's going to get a bit warm. Oh, is it? Oh, wait, yeah. And then after that, you're like, what do we talk about now?
The weather next week. Oh, yeah, the weather next week's supposed to be lovely.
That's true. That is true. And then the next thing is the complaint for how long it's taking for whatever you're waiting for. It's taking fucking ages, isn't it? Yeah, it really is taking long. You know, I was here last week. It didn't take this long this time last week. Oh, really? What's the best time to car? Oh, fuck me. I hate fucking small talk. Fuck off. That's what I want to say.
So we've taken a little break. We took like a week or so off, mainly because it was around Easter time and it was fun. We went and got together, didn't we, and saw some family, which was nice. I started a new job recently, so yeah, just a little busy.
I haven't even talked to you about your new job yet. Is it going well?
Yeah, it's going well. If it wasn't, and there's a few people I work with there that listen to this podcast and will be like, yeah, but some of them are cunts.
Well, you never know.
Yeah, no, it's going well. I'll chat more in detail off pod. But yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. Nonetheless, it's pretty much the same gig, just more opportunity and more money. So ain't nothing wrong with that.
Damn right.
So I'm also very excited because Infinity War is just getting closer and closer. And I just keep on thinking about how that film is going to break my brain. It's just going to break my brain.
I'm still waiting for tickets to go on sale at my secret cinema.
Oh, of course, because they're different than all the other cinemas, aren't they?
Yeah, they don't do it early. You kind of just have to. I know they're going to be airing it. I just need to figure out when. So I don't think I'm going to be seeing it when it opens. So hopefully, the internet is not just like, isn't it crazy how Iron Man died or some crazy shit like that? Where I'm like, God damn it!
Yeah, no, that would really suck for you, wouldn't it?
It's happened to me before, and I hate it.
Yeah. Speaking of movies as well, I saw Tomb Raider over my little break that I had before I started my new job, and it was all right. It wasn't anything amazing. It had some good action scenes, especially particular video game tribute scenes to the actual video game itself, where Lara Croft is stuck in a situation and has to, monkey bar climb her way out of it or do some amazing maneuvers to get through. But Does she have two guns and fights wolves in a tomb? Unfortunately, no.
Well, that's Tomb Raider to me.
Yeah, no, it is. I agree. They kind of do a little, nod your head moment for the two guns, but it was Lara Croft's Batman Begins story, really. It's more about why she's a Tomb Raider. Yeah, and ultimately, all I realise is it's just a huge rip-off of The Last Crusade. It's the exact same plot. Her dad is on a mission that he's dedicated his whole life to try and find something, and he goes missing, so Lara Croft goes out and she picks up in her dad's footsteps, and then eventually they combine forces to pursue the thing as father.
It's a plot twist.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone's gone through a transition.
It's like Chinatown, where it's like, she's your mother, she's your sister, she's your brother.
My father, my daughter. My mother and my daughter.
But yeah, it's a direct rip-off of Indy and The Last Crusade.
Are they tied together on chairs at some point?
No, that's actually a very good point. But there is a sort of similar scene where the stakes are kind of similar to that. So yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't amazing. It had I wouldn't say a twist ending, but something where they explain it more scientifically when it's supposed to be all magical and mystical, which I quite liked. It wasn't just relying on, oh yeah, well, it's magic, so it works, who cares?
It's not like going to be now they're doing the Marvel thing where it's an expanded universe and they're like, you're going to team up with Crash Bandicoot now and all the other icons of the PlayStation 1 era.
I actually like the sound of that.
Yeah, well, that'd be a lot of communication between studios.
Can you imagine? That would be Tomb Raider, Crash Bandicoot. Who else would you want to? You've got to chuck in the Mario Brothers in there for good measure.
Well, no. PlayStation 1, we're talking.
Oh, I see. Okay. I don't know. Yep. You're the video game expert, not me, so you would know.
You could have Rayman in there. That'd be pretty cool. You could have Chris Redfield shows up, or Jill Valentine.
This sounds dope. I would watch this universe.
The Crash Bandicoot doesn't really fit, but he's there. He's just if something goes wrong, he's just like, wow,
wow.
Oh, it'd be cool. Tomb Raider undiscovers an old Windiga, the masks from Crash Bandicoot.
See, this writes itself. I'm liking the sound of this idea. It really does.
Well, we're just the best, we can make a story out of fucking a piece of poo.
Who was it like?
Oh, Spyro the Dragon would have to be on the team.
Spyro was Duke Nukem.
Duke, I think, comes a bit earlier, I think.
Okay.
Hang on, I'm just looking at my PlayStation games. 1 second.
For all listeners out there that care about Spider-Man the Animated Series, we will talk about it, and we've also got a fantastic interview with comic book artist and writer Declan Shalvey coming up. But in the meantime, I'm really interested in this video game universe, so let's chat about it.
What happens is she's got to team up with someone that can get in somewhere really sneakily, so of course she calls up Snake, and you're from Metal Gear Solid.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
All right, so let's. All right, so they rock up on some island in a boat. Who steps out on the beach? You've got Lara Croft, you've got Crash Bandicoot, you've got Snake.
Tony Hawk does a grind down the railings of the ship. He's like, guys, we got to collect all the letters to spell skate.
Oh my god, I love this so much. This is great. Yeah, I want to make this. And then Spyro could fly through the jungle at one point or over water, which no one else can get over.
And then they're in a city and they're in a rush, and then someone pulls up and he's like, "Welcome to my crazy taxi, get in."
This is awesome, man. I want to watch this movie. It's far better than the Tomb Raider film that I saw.
I just like the idea of Lara Croft on discovering the Windiga mask, and they have to stop like Dr. Vortex, who teams up with all the other villains of the PlayStation era.
Yep. You've sold a ticket. I'm in. Now you're going to make it.
Crash Bandicoot and Tomb Raider go together pretty well, because you think of all the levels, like the Aztec levels in Crash Bandicoot. You could see Lara Croft going through that.
You could. Yeah, that'd be really fun. Anyway, so moving on.
Anyway, this podcast is about Spider-Man.
Exactly. As I said before, we got an awesome interview with Declan Shalvey coming up, who was not only a really accomplished comic book artist and writer, but a massive...
He ain't done shit.
Yeah, well, all right.
New, he's fresh. He's...
Turn your jealousy off. Turn your jealousy microphone way down.
I'm going to work my way to get to the Shalvey levels, or Shalvey.
Shalvey, yeah. So, but anyway, he was also a massive fan of the animated series growing up, so that was fun chatting with him. So we'll get to that in just a few moments. But I wanted to say that also another voice actor from the show has been in contact and shown interest and wants to come on the show, which is really exciting. And plus, we've still, I've still been having conversations and just trying to organise it with a famous comic book writer and also a creator of some very well-known characters that everybody will definitely know the moment you say their names. He also wants to come on the show. It's just finding the right time. So we got some people lined up, but definitely it was a pleasure to talk to Declan last night, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's going on in the comic book world for you, buddy?
I'm just working away on the drawing Spawn, and I'm getting sick. Todd did this thing where, so it's all about these baby spawns, right? And in the first issue, in the script, he has in parentheses, like, sorry, in lots of places, because Spawn's farting out a bunch of baby spawns, and, like, to the point where there's, like, 150 of them, or even more. So I've been continuously drawing all these little fucking babies, losing my mind. But luckily in this issue 2, what he does is he figured out a way to limit the numbers of them. So I'm getting to that point now in the script where I'm like, thank fuck, because I'm sick of drawing a million of these little guys.
Well, I mean, I can't really feel bad for you because you're working with Todd McFarlane and you're drawing Spawn and you're drawing multiple issues, and he said your name on a live stream video to the world, so I really don't feel bad for you.
I think if you were in my shoes, you would.
Yeah, but I'm not, so I don't feel bad for you.
All right, well, thank you for your sympathy. It's very kind.
As your brother, you got this. You're fine.
I tell you what I had no fucking sympathy for was you being off for like a whole bloody month with pay. I was like, that in my world is impossible.
Yeah, well, that's one of the perks.
No, I suppose if let's say I was full-time at Marvel and then DC scooped me up, I might have a non-competitive clause where I would have to not do anything, and that would be pretty fucking dope.
You would, but I don't know the differences between the comic book world and what I do as a profession, because there may be more red tape or less red tape. I have no idea. It all depends on your contract, I suppose, so I can't really speak to what comic book contracts look like when it comes to non-competes.
Okie dokie.
and neither can you, so yeah. But that would be dope, though, because a month off was definitely relaxing. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But it is nice to get up and have a purpose, I suppose, and have something to do, because...
Purpose?
Well, it's true. After a while, you're just like, I've seen I watched all of Westworld in a day. It was amazing. I really enjoyed it, but I ploughed through so many movies I wanted to see and TV shows, which I enjoyed. But after about 2.5 weeks of that, I'm like, now what? Like, I'm fucking bored.
You should have spent that time writing as many scripts as possible.
Yeah, no, I did. Like I said, we've had discussions about that, and we got stuff brewing, you and me, with our own independent projects that, fingers crossed, is going to be picked up by a publisher.
Well, I've sent it off to Image, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but we've also got another publisher interested, don't we? So that would be good.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so that's very exciting for us, because selfishly, we want to do this, and anyone that's listening, you can do it too. Obviously, my brother having contacts in the comic book world has helped tremendously, but apply yourself. And actually, it's a good segue to go into Declan's interview right now, because he does give quite a lot of sound advice and solid advice during this. And anyone that has been listening to us and our interviews knows that we like to give as much inspiration and as much content to any inspiring writer, artist, voice actor, whatever you may be.
Aspiring, not inspiring.
Aspiring. And we really want to give you some stuff that you can take with you. It's most of the time it's probably going to be, I've heard this, it's just going to be someone saying it a little differently. But I think Declan definitely had a lot to say, because he's been working in comics for 10 years. So he's seen a lot and knows a lot. So without further ado, so we hand it over to Declan?
Yep.
All right, let's have a listen. Hello, webheads, and welcome to the interview segment of Spider-Man, the Animated Series podcast, where we are very excited to welcome another guest to our show. He is an extremely accomplished comic book artist and writer that has worked for titles such as Marvel, DC, Image, IDW, Boom Studios, 2000 AD, and many more, penciling, inking, or writing for characters such as Spider-Man, Batman, Venom, Captain America, Deadpool, Old Man Logan, Judge Dredd, Wolverine, X-Men, Daredevil, The Punisher, Transformers, one of my favourites, even James Bond, and pretty much any other character you can think of as well. So if you read comics, you have undoubtedly come across this man's work at some point and enjoyed the stories he's either drawn or written. So without further ado, it is our great pleasure to welcome Mr. Declan Shalvey to the show. Say hello, Declan.
Hello, Declan.
And also joined by another comic book artist who happens to be my brother, Mr. Will Robson. Say hello, Will.
Hello, I don't have as impressive of a list as that one, but I still draw comics every now and then.
Oh, bless.
Yeah, it just means I've been around a while, that's all. I used to be the hip, well, not that hip, up-and-comer. I guess I'm not anymore.
No, you're an old fart now.
Oh well, it was good while it lasted.
I'm surprised you're not an official young gun.
I think those are for exclusive guys.
Right.
I think the young guns are exclusively for exclusive artists, and I've never been exclusive. So,
well, I want to be a bloody young gun.
I think we'd all like to have that, just to be considered like, a big deal.
Yeah.
Am I a big deal? No. Oh.
Well, so what's Young Gun? Is that just literally you just want to be a young hot?
No. Young Gun is an official title that Marvel gives to artists. Before that, it was Ryan Stegman, and I can't remember anybody else. But
originally years ago, it was Jimmy Chung, and maybe I'm remembering wrong, but Trevor Harrison, and like we went back like 10 years ago, it was the first time.
I think Stegman was involved in that as well.
No, he wasn't around back then. He's not that old.
I thought he was.
No, he started at Marvel around the same time as me, which would have been like 8 years ago, roughly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was off by 2 years.
No, I remember not being at Marvel and the Young Guns having been a thing for a while. Like Jimmy Chung is there like 20 years, And right. I think it was an mid 2000s thing originally.
Well, I know I saw the new ones, and I'm very happy for Javier Garren that he's one of them, because he's a fantastic artist. He's the guy that I first did my filler-in job on Star-Lord with. He was the main artist, and he's always been super nice.
What's he worked on?
Javier?
Yeah.
I only know him from Star-Lord and Secret Warriors, because that's...
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know his stuff.
Yeah, that's the stuff I work with him on. He's great. Anyway, so we're here to interview you.
Oh, yeah.
No, it doesn't matter. It's all good content. And there could be people out there listening right now taking notes and be like, oh, shit, I didn't know that. That's good to know.
There's lots of good guys on there this year. No girls, which kind of sucks. But again, I think I have a feeling it's probably like you need to be exclusive to be considered like one of those guys. And I think that limits the talent pool a little bit more. But everybody who's on there is great. Because being one of those like really, really like petty guys, I'd be the one to go like, them, they suck, But, no, I remember when I saw all the names, like, they are actually all great.
No, I'm very jealous. This was right when I was leaving to go do this McFarlane book, and I was like,
right.
I was like, oh man, could I have been a young gun? Maybe.
I think Marvel would hold on to a lot more artists if they played with them artists' egos more, if they're like, we'll just be like, we'll treat you like you're a bigger deal, but not pay you more. You'd be like, sure.
Great deal.
I don't think we act in our best interest sometimes, but don't get me wrong. If Will Robson was on that Young Guns list, I would have been, this is bullshit.
I would have probably agreed with you.
Yeah, you would have flown all the way over from Ireland just to fucking come
like,
face to face.
What the hell is this crap?
All right, man. Well, we will kick off, as usual, with all our guests with 5 questions that revolve around Spider-Man and also to do with the animated series, which, as you were talking off-pod, you watched the shit out of when you were growing up, right?
I grew up in the west of Ireland, so like I didn't have Spider-Man comics, but around that time they had the Batman animated series and the X-Men series and that Spider-Man series, and I remember. If I recall, I think X-Men was at first, and I just remember. Yes. Yeah, I remember the expectation for a new Spider-Man cartoon. I was like over the moon, and I remember just loving it when it came on, big time.
Awesome, yeah. And naming those 2 other series, those 3 series really did define the 90s, didn't they? X-Men, Spider-Man, Batman, all of them were so damn good, and. I obviously after the 90s moved on. I still watch cartoons to this day, but not modern ones. I don't think that there's ever been 3 amazing series, a trio like that is just going on at the same time, where everyone can just completely just dive into comic books, but in cartoon form.
Yeah, it's weird because then I tried getting my hands on comics afterwards, and I remember the first X-Men comic I had. One of the first ones I got had like Sabretooth, Banshee, Jubilee, and Emma Frost. And I'm like, where the hell's Wolverine? Like, where's Cyclops? It's so weird how the like comics were so confusing compared to the cartoons. But it is weird that like that trifecta of cartoons have. I mean, anyone like my age or like our generation totally grew up on that stuff, and I don't kind of hear that talk for like anyone below. You know, I remember the X-Men Evolution cartoon. I remember follow-up Spidey cartoons. But none of them really seem to kind of hit the pop culture the way that those ones did.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it also comes down a lot to storytelling, because I watched the X-Men Evolution cartoon, and I watched the Spectacular Spider-Man as well. You
used to always tell me, like, oh, you need to watch Spectacular Spider-Man, it's good.
It is, and it was good, but all I did was...
Was that the MTV one, was it?
No,
that
one was awful.
3D one, yeah, that one was...
That one was with Neil Patrick Harris did the voice of Spider-Man.
That's right, I wasn't on TV, but I remember I got it on DVD, and I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either.
No, it wasn't very good. Yeah, Neil Patrick Harris was an alright Spidey, but the Spectacular Spider-Man, I don't know who voiced Spider-Man for that show, but I did watch that cartoon. They did some new stuff and changing it where instead of Norman Osborn being Green Goblin first, it was Harry. So they kind of reversed that, and then they did Venom being Eddie Brock as this kid, and it was based in high school, which Will, I know you don't like for Spider-Man to be in high school, yeah. So it was,
really?
Yeah, he's not a big fan. He prefers university or college Spidey.
My first Spider-Man, like your first love is a great love or whatever the saying is. Mine was the animated series, and that was Parker studying at uni and
he was
working at the Bugle. Yeah. But the thing about it is, if you have Parker in high school, you can't have the Bugle, and I'd rather have the Bugle than anything else.
That's true.
I guess that's fair. I guess I hadn't considered that, because did he only start working? Yeah, I guess that's right, isn't it?
Yeah,
you need that. You need those relationships like Jonah and Robbie and Betty, and things kind of really open up a lot more, and like the kind of classic Spidey door.
That's a very good point, actually. Yeah, so. Was this your first exposure to Spider-Man, or did you be a fan before?
No, I would have actually remembered that, Spider-Man, like the actual 60s cartoon, because I remember being a kid and like you're watching those cartoons, but or the Batman 60s cartoon, I didn't know it was made in the 60s. I just thought it was like being made then. So when you're a kid, you're not aware of what the 60s or 70s or pop culture is like. So I watched all those cartoons when I was a kid, but I was very young. The 90s animated series was the first one where the characters were way more complex.
Yeah, and that leads me back to what I was saying before, which to finish my thought is it's the storytelling. That's what was so good about all three of those cartoons. They took from the comic books, and they took some liberties, but pretty much stuck to those stories and really wove them into that mythos. And that's why, every episode of Spider-Man, especially when you get through the first half of season 1, starts to be a saga where every episode is connected to the last one, and it comes to some giant crescendo at the end where something huge has been building up and happens. And Batman, as much as I loved it, didn't do that.
I also think I think all three of them were made by fans of the actual content. It wasn't a production line to get it out, ship animation off to Japan or something like that. I think they were really, they were passionate about the project itself.
Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting because I don't know if you noticed when as a kid, but I would notice when the animation wasn't as good. Like same with Batman and X-Men, but with the Spidey one too, you'd notice when the animation was farmed out somewhere else because the quality wouldn't be as good. And I really did hate the 3D stuff in that cartoon. I understood what they were trying to do. Yeah, the city stuff, hated it. I think that's why I don't like 3D stuff in general now, because I really hated it in the animated series. It would just take me out of the story all the time.
Yeah, I agree. There's it's when you go back and watch it, it's the only thing that's dated about the show. Which is, it's funny because they were trying to be innovative and up to date and trying to be something different and make that jump into using 3D models. But ultimately, when you go back and watch it, you're like, this is great. This still holds up. The animation is amazing. The voice actors are amazing. The stories are amazing. And then you see a 3D city that looks like something you could draw in, I don't know, Microsoft Paint. And you're just like, oh, shit, that looks terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the downside to being like on the cutting edge.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, man. So we will kick off with our first 5 questions. And question 1 is, who is your favorite Spider-Man villain and why?
I think it is Venom.
Okay.
Like I remember.
Popular choice.
Yeah, I'm sure it is a popular choice. Like, because I mean, Mysterio always seemed, like, as a kid who grew up in the 90s, Mysterio seemed lame. Scorpion seemed lame. Tarzan seemed lame. You know, as in they would look very goofy in those kind of original Ditko designs.
Well, as a kid of the 90s, I disagree.
Well, as a kid of the 90s, I disagree with your disagreement. But Venom was like, you know, had this kind of weird adrenaline, like 90s adrenaline with it. It knew everything about him. It knew it had his powers. It was unstoppable. You know, in a kind of weird way, like Venom's kind of was ruined the second he was invented, because like you can't replicate exactly how terrifying Venom is. You know, he's ultimately going to be neutered. But I think just him just being this kind of extreme flip side of Spidey was really terrifying. And my introduction to him was the cartoon, and like that voice was terrifying, and he'd just pop out of nowhere.
When he stalks Peter Parker in those 2 episodes, and he just shows up, you know, when Peter's meeting Mary Jane, and there's Eddie Brock, and he's playing friend, and MJ's like, oh, I met your friend Eddie, here he is, and it's chilling actually. And then he goes to see Aunt May. You're like, oh shit!
He gets right under Peter's skin in a way that no other, like closest being Green Goblin, because similarly Norman Osborn knew who he was. But even at that, Norman Osborn didn't know everything about him, whereas like, you know, Eddie Brock or Venom did. And there's a weird kind of creepy element to that, I think, that hasn't really been replicated.
That's very true, actually. And I'm going back to a particular point you said during there, where he's ultimately always going to be neutered. When you said that, and I haven't really thought about that, but it's true, because he is that sheer menace that is he's Jaws, he's Alien, he's all of the horror movies that have the biggest, baddest, scariest villain. But to try and portray that in a cartoon, obviously that's going to completely dull it down and tame it for TV. And then obviously what we've seen in live action with Spider-Man 3, it was ridiculous and even worse. And then what looks like they're doing in Venom coming up with Tom Hardy, it doesn't look like a horror film.
I disagree. I think it does look like a horror film. Like it does not look like doesn't look like a superhero film. You know, that's why everyone's kind of angry with it. But I'm optimistic that film is going to surprise us.
I'm okay with it not looking like a superhero film, because obviously he's a villain, but I felt like it looked like some sort of Michael Bay action film when I was watching that trailer.
I mean, it's hard to get anything from it because it was so kind of vague.
True.
But at the same time, I prefer a vague trailer over a specific one. Like, you know, by the time Spider-Man Homecoming came out, I already knew what was everything in that film. You know, I saw all the set pieces. I saw, you know, Iron Man's in it loads. Like, it actually made me less interested in seeing the film. I hate it when trailers just give away so much story, then there's no point. I have no idea.
That's why I avoid as much trailers as I possibly can.
Yeah, you're better off. Like, whereas Venom, I have no idea what that's going to be, which makes me kind of want to see it all the more, to be honest.
Okay.
Maybe it'll be the Get Out of superhero films.
Yeah, who knows? You know, which, I mean, because I think that similar to kind of some of the best superhero stuff that I like, you know, the movies are embracing, they're taking a superhero genre and they're making the film a different genre. Like Ant-Man was basically a heist film. Mm-hmm. Winter Soldier was like an espionage film, you know, mixed in with all the superhero stuff. So I think, you know, you can't just be a straight up superhero film, because that's just that'll just be boring.
We talked about this on the show before, and I was saying I think the key to Marvel's longevity is going to be them constantly adding these other genres into their already superhero genre.
Yeah, I mean,
we completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, they've done that in the comics for years, you know, and they've been able to. I think you're right. They're probably going to last longer because of that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, DC's still doing laser beams in the sky, and the world's going to end, so they're way behind.
I just haven't watched them. I watched Man of Steel. I hated it with a passion. So I kind of made the conscious decision of going, well, if I keep watching them, then who's really the asshole in this scenario? Is it them for doing the thing that makes the money, or is it me just going to go spending my time and money on films I'm not going to like? Yeah. So
you've made a very good decision. You're not missing anything. I stopped watching after Suicide Squad, and I'm not upset.
Yeah, the Suicide Squad. I remember when Batman Superman came out, and a friend of mine said like, "Oh, this isn't going to be good, but I'm totally going to go watch it." And I was like, it's your fault. This stuff. I mean, a Superman Batman film or a Spider-Man film, I don't care. I don't want it to exist just to exist. I want it to be good. And I hated I hated The Amazing Spider-Man, so I didn't bother going to the second one.
The second one is way worse than the first one, and the first one is terrible.
Yeah, the first one's really it was really bad. I wanted to like it so bad because I liked so much about it. I liked the director and I liked the actors, but it just goes to show that doesn't mean a film is going to be good. Same with Man of Steel. I don't like the director, but I liked all the casting. I'm like, this actually looks good, and it was so not good. I'm like, well, I'm not going to watch something just because it's a superhero adaptation anymore. It's got to be better than that, you know. But saying that, I did like Homecoming. I was kind of like, it was what I thought it would be, and it was fun, and I liked it. But I definitely didn't like it as much as everybody else.
Yeah, it's in my top 5 for Marvel films, but that's totally understandable.
I saw it with Nate Stockman. We got drunk, went back to mine and watched Spider-Man: Homecoming, and he fell asleep during it.
Really?
Admittedly, he loves the film, so he's seen it loads of times, and he was drunk, but still.
Oh, I didn't know that you guys were that close.
We're not.
You're like, it's the first time I ever met him.
No, well, I don't see him that much. He lives kind of basically at the top of the country, and I live in Dublin, so he doesn't get down that much. So he was down just for the night, and there wasn't much on. So he knew I hadn't seen it, and he really, really wanted me to see it because he loved Homecoming.
That's funny. So when he fell asleep, did you draw a masterpiece on his face?
No. I mean, I wouldn't get paid for it, so what's the point?
True artist right there. I love
it.
Exactly. So moving on to question 2 then. Who is your favourite Spider-Man ally and why?
Ally. Man, I really liked it in the comics whenever Daredevil would pop up. Because you wouldn't expect that. But I'm trying to think specific to the cartoon.
Well, you had Daredevil in the cartoon. Yeah,
you did. Daredevil popped up. But I always found it... I did actually find it... I really wanted other superheroes to pop up, but I always found it kind of weird sometimes. At when the X-Men were in it, and it was all the voice actors from the show, but they were all in that Spider-Man animated style. It was very creepy to me. But I'm trying to think... I'm drawing a blank. There's got to be somebody more interesting than Mary Jane.
Well, I mean, MJ's my favourite, but yeah, we've had...
May, Robbie Robertson.
We've had Felicia Hardy, Black Cat.
I did like Felicia a lot, I have to say.
Yeah, she's great.
She had a different edge than all the other guys. Like everybody else had goody two-shoes, but she didn't quite know where she was going.
She had so many story arcs in that show. She went from annoying little rich girl to then suddenly Morbius's girlfriend and love.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then she was in a relationship with Hobgoblin, was engaged to him. And then she ended up becoming the Black Cat. It's lots of story arcs for Felicia. She's had a hell of a journey.
Yeah,
it's weird. I mean, but Spidey's kind of a loner. Like for someone who's such a kind of a lovable character, he's actually kind of a loner. He doesn't really rely on other people that much.
It's true, yeah, because he doesn't want to hurt them, so he doesn't want to bring them
exactly. Yeah, anyone who gets close to him gets hurt, so he always kind of stays away. But something I did like about the animated show is that it did build on characters like Morbius and Punisher was in it a few times, and he did kind of build relationships, or it wasn't like a blank slate every single episode, it really kind of built the world around him.
Yeah, it's very true. Even though it's the worst Punisher because he can't kill anyone.
Yeah, I listened to your episode with Nate, and I had no idea that... I mean, I got the laser thing. I was like, clearly you can't shoot a gun, which always seemed ridiculous to me because lasers are way more bombastic. But
it's true, yeah. They could cut you in half.
Yeah, I had no idea that he didn't punch anyone. I mean, I guess it goes to show how good a job they did of that not being obvious. But the plasma thing was always hilarious as well with Morbius.
Yeah.
You were blowing my mind. I didn't know any of that stuff.
Yeah, which leads me on to the third question. What is your favourite memory or moment that sticks out for you from the animated series?
Oh, man.
Or it could be an episode, or you're just like, oh yeah, I just love when Daredevil showed up. It could be anything like that. But yeah, usually it's whatever pops in your head first. That's the episode or moment that made you a true fan of the show at the time.
All I can think of is the scenes with Aunt May. I mean, there would always be. I know you'd always find Spider-Man would have a problem, and then it would be a conversation with Aunt May that makes him figure it all out. I can't think of a single moment.
That's your favorite thing?
Yeah, well, yeah.
The cartoon with Venom and all this stuff. I love Aunt May. She's great.
No, but it's that's when he would problem solve. That's when he'd find out what to do. That's when he'd know the right move to make. Whenever he was really desperate, it would be Aunt May that he talks to, and she wouldn't be like, "Well, I know what Spider-Man should do." It would generally be like, "Well, that awful Spider-Man is whatever," but he'd come up with the solution, and that's always the bits that got me the more. I know that sounds a very lame answer, but
no, I mean that's what popped into your head, so it has to be what stood out for you.
I do remember as well with the spacecraft with the Venom symbiote landed on the bridge.
Yeah,
I remember actually the animation and that's really good as well.
Well, they used it later on in the opening of it because they're probably like, "Man, this shit looks good. We should probably reuse it."
That's right. It is in the intro. Yeah, it's and it's also the only scene you won't like out of that is right before the spaceship crash lands and it's got that beautiful animation. You sadly have a terribly 3D drawn bridge that comes into show.
I'm sure. And any moment where Spider-Man's eyes got big always totally nerded me out. It didn't happen often, but now and then his eyes would just pop big like the Bagley Spider-Man eyes. And I was a big Mark Bagley fan, so I was always like, "Oh, savage!"
That's true. It did not happen often. In fact, we just reviewed The Menace and Mysterio, and he flashes back to the death of Uncle Ben and how obviously the rubber escaped him, made Uncle Ben disappear because they couldn't say killed or murdered.
Yeah.
And then once he catches up to the rubber in the building, and he sees and he connects that memory as the same person, his eyes pop and emote, and that's the first time in the show. And honestly, I can't remember, when we go on and review more episodes in detail, I'll probably pick it up, but I don't remember many times he emoted like that.
It might even be the only time, but I remember it really searing in my brain.
Yeah, it could be.
It's so interesting to hear like other people's perspectives on the show where my favorite bits are Spider-Man's eyes popping out and Aunt May like figuring out what's the problem. Like that's what I love about chatting to people about this. It's like that's not what I would have ever expected anybody to say. It's brilliant.
It's true. Yeah, it's a good point. Which then goes on to the next question of why do you think people love the character of Spider-Man so much? I don't know if you're going to top Nate's answer because it was just so brief but hilarious, which was literally because people's lives are empty and they need something to fill it. But maybe you can go a little more into depth of why you think people love the character of Spider-Man.
I think it's been like people have talked about this a lot, but I mean he's the everyman, like in a way that other characters like. Superman was, Clark Kent is raised on a farm, but he was still Superman, and Bruce Wayne his parents were murdered, but he was still a millionaire. Whereas Peter Parker, like, he lost his uncle. He didn't even have fucking parents, that character scrapes by and it's when Peter Parker's in situations where he's more like, where he's more privileged, or he's got more or he's got money, or he's got fame, he's got power, and that's always the thing. Like that's why Venom. That's why the symbiote didn't work with him because he had power, and it doesn't suit that character. And in so many ways, when what the public likes about Peter Parker is no matter how hard done by he is, or no matter how he has no money or he can't get a girlfriend, he still tries to do the right thing. I think unlike a lot of other heroes, he's the one that always does that. And once you take that away from him, he doesn't quite work.
No, it's, you know what, man? That's a really good answer. It's no wonder you're also a writer, because that was a writer's answer for sure, and in depth and looking at the core of the character. And you're right. If he's given any of those luxuries, then he's not who he is, and he is that everyday guy that, even though he does have these Spider-Man powers, he's now got even more responsibility and more weight on his shoulders because of it. So yeah, Peter like Parker's had a hard life, man.
Yeah, it's like if you know, whenever you're reading a Batman comic and it goes to like the Bruce Wayne side of things, you're all like, ugh, you know, because Bruce Wayne isn't interesting, nor is Clark Kent particularly, but Peter Parker is. You know, Peter Parker can be just as interesting as when he puts on the mask, and I think that's kind of a rarity with them. I think that's kind of what makes Spider-Man different.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great answer.
So you're saying it's better than Nate's answer?
I will tell you off pod just in case Nate's listening to this one. I don't know if you guys are like, you listen to my one if I listen to your one, yeah?
No, we haven't talked about it, but I think I know the answer.
I'm messaging you right now on Skype, Deck. Just
I can't even remember what the hell I said.
What, for why people love Spider-Man so much?
Yeah. Obviously, it didn't make any impact, so let's just move on.
Yeah, go back and listen to your episode then. And finally, the last answer is, if you could have one of Spider-Man's abilities, whether it be web slinging, wall crawling, super strength, super agility and balance, or spider sense, which one would it be and why?
I think wall crawling. It's one thing that got me when I did see Spider-Man: Homecoming, and it's one thing that got me in the first episode of Spider-Man animated series. When he walks on the walls, it did such a in the animated show. It did such a good job with it, and I really liked that with Spider-Man: Homecoming too. One of my favorite bits is when he crawls in to his own bedroom and
love that.
Yeah, I was like this. While I didn't love the whole film entirely, that just felt so Spider-Man to me. I didn't go like, oh, well, you know, they must have filmed that upside down or they must have added that in post. It felt so real.
Yeah.
Probably because we all know that the actor, what's his name again?
Tom Holland.
Yeah. Tom Holland. He was so good, like, and he was so believable. You know, you'd watch other films and you can see the moment basically where the CG model comes in and does the action. But because you felt that Tom Holland could do so much of it, it just felt so like grounded and real, and I loved that. What the hell was the question again?
Well, you said no, it's fine. And to touch on that, I love that scene too, because he closes the door really quietly because he's sneaking in, trying to hide from Aunt May. Turns around and there's his best friend with the Death Star Lego.
Yeah,
set.
That was great. Yeah, that was
brilliant.
Great.
So the answer that you gave was the Spider-Man ability you like the most is wall crawling.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, wall crawling. I think there's something about that again is very different. It in and of itself doesn't seem that great, but it'd be pretty class actually to be able to climb walls.
Yeah, I think that would be an awesome ability, and especially if you needed to get somewhere or get up high quickly. Or
I'll tell you, this is probably embarrassing, but you know, I used to have to get the bus all the time when I was in college, and you know, you'd be driving along you know, roads in Ireland, it's all countryside, and I remember thinking like, oh, Spider-Man would be screwed here because he wouldn't be able to web swing. But I was thinking, well, if he could run, then he could probably swing up on top of that pole and then hop on top of that car. And weirdly,
that's what I used to do as a kid. I used to always look out the window and picture Spider-Man swinging over whatever obstacles are out there. I think a lot of people have that.
Yeah, I'm the same way, guys. I've done that many, many times. I travel into London every day, and at least like a couple times a month, I'll see something and be like, now how would Spider-Man get through that and get over
Wow, that's weird because I've never admitted that. I thought that would be a very, very embarrassing thing to admit.
No.
Hang on. Embarrassing. Deck, you're on a show about Spider-Man the Animated Series podcast. You're being interviewed by a comic book artist and just a super fan and geek. And also, you're a comic book artist and writer. Like, it's not going to be embarrassing on this show.
Fair enough.
That's great. So that leaves off the Spider-Man questions there. So we're just going to move on to just general questions about you and your career and how you get...
Oh, my favourite bit.
Yeah, exactly. You just get to talk about yourself, as everyone loves to do. So my first question is, you did start as an artist, but did you want to be a writer first, or did that desire come later?
That came later. I mean, all I ever really wanted to do was draw, to be honest. But as you kind of got to go through your career and stuff, and you notice some hurdles here and there, and I'll admit part of the reason I wanted to. Part of it was that I figured if I could write for myself, then I wouldn't. I mean, I'm very fortunate that people want to work with me,
right?
Which is great. I'm very, very, very lucky, but I don't know if I say something stupid in 2 years, if people will still want to talk to me. So being able to write would be good to have another skill set in my back pocket, basically, because so much of, even though comics is a visual medium, so much of it's based on who the writer is, and I didn't want that to be a problem down the line. So it's partly it, because I'm sure Will knows. I talk about like how artists don't really get as much credit for the work that they do on books. So I didn't kind of want to end up like that. But two, it was also just another kind of natural step in telling a story. Like I've drawn so many, worked from so many scripts. I've worked from different types of scripts, different types of writers. It's just kind of part of the natural evolution. Could I do this from scratch? And I thought I'd be really bad at it. I thought I would suck at it, and it turns out I was right. No, it's hard. I mean, I have no idea if I'm good or not. And I think what the problem was the more I was just very much kind of like get better drawing, and then people started paying me to do it. I'm like, okay, well, make sure you do a good job at this, and I just became obsessed with being the best artist I could. And then after a while, you're like, well, if I write now, then too many people would see it and it'll suck. So you get worried that there's too many eyes on you. But I think doing injection at Image and getting to kind of like have some Irish stuff in that, Warren wrote it in for me. I think that I really wanted to do something Irish, so I had this idea to do the Savage Town graphic novel, and I'd been tipping away on that for about a couple of years. When out of nowhere, Will Moss at Marvel asked if I wanted to write and draw a Nick Fury thing. And I'd already, I'd kind of gotten the writing bug at that stage because I'd been kind of working on Savage Town and trying to get it better and refine it and tweak it around. So then
he approached you because of the Savage Town?
No, he told me he was really, really sweet. He said that he was reaching out to me because he could tell from my work that I had a strong visual sense and I was a good storyteller. Like that, I had a good sense of good storytelling. And for the book he wanted to do, he wanted it to be a writer artist because he was kind of hoping for this type of Steranko feel because it was a Nick Fury. I think he just want to tie into that a little bit, but
right.
But he had absolutely no idea if I wanted to write or not. He just he took a chance on me, which was really cool. So, well, it was funny because he said, I know you're going to be too busy to do this, but I'm going to make it hard for you to say no. And then he said, I'd like you to write it as well. And the son of a bitch was right because I would have probably said no because I was busy on injection, but having the opportunity to write it as well, I just kind of felt it was something I couldn't pass up,
Yeah, definitely.
And ever since then, it's not that I'm like, oh, I want to write, I must write. It's just like I've had an idea for something, and then I'm like, well, I wonder if I could make that happen, and then I've been able to make that happen. When I was asked to do the James Bond thing, I'm like, well, what?
Oh man, I've got this question later, but if we're going into it, just
By the way, my brother's a gigantic James Bond fan.
I am a massive James Bond fan, as much as I am a Spider-Man and Batman fan. He is. I don't know what it is about the character and all of that, but he's just always been a big part of my fandom.
When we lived together, I once tucked him into bed because he drank too much. And he said, "Oh, put on a James Bond for me," and I put on the first one. He's like, "Oh, great choice." And you were just like, "Thank you," and and I got you like a glass of water, and your dog laid next to you, and you're like, "This is great."
Yeah, I was very drunk, but Dr. No was a good choice for sure. So I'm a big James Bond fan.
Well, I'm actually not a big James Bond fan.
Oh, right. Okay, so that's fine. That's no problem.
I grew up with it. This might sound a bit odd, but it was just so British. Mm-hmm. And growing up in Ireland, something that's kind of like, like the Roger Moore Union Jack parachute thing,
Yeah.
Careful, that's my favorite.
Yeah, it would just, and it's, admitting bigotry here, but growing up in Ireland, a lot of us are kind of like, calm down with the British shit,
Well, that's all the time we got for this week, listeners. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being on the show.
But no, I like the character and the concept and the spy stuff and all that. So, but as you know, I have the same thing with Doctor Who sometimes as well. When I was growing up, Doctor Who was just so British. But we got BBC when I was in my teens, and you become more exposed to that stuff. I like EastEnders and Coronation Street and all that. But I do remember being a kid and just being a little weirded out by it. But so that kind of put me off it when I was young. But I do quite like the Sam Mendes stuff, and I love the genre. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the character, I don't find much interesting about the character because there's not a whole lot to him as a character. If you know what I mean.
You said that about Bruce Wayne as well. I see a trend going on. You hate rich people.
Yeah, or just attractive action men that get.
I'm like, he hates two of my most favorite characters. Interesting.
No, but the character of Bond is kind of, you can't go too much into. What works about him is how little you know. If you know everything about his backstory, then the same way the argument against Wolverine, finding out about his backstory. There's some characters, the less you know, the better. And that doesn't. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I think with Bond, it's so when I was asked to do the James Bond thing, well, one, it wasn't actually Bond, which was like, oh well, I don't know if I want to do it. But then it became, because what I would have done is I would have done a big action scene, like you always do, and I would love to have done all that stuff. But the character was actually M. Yeah,
because I was reading about that. But is Bond in the book at all?
No,
okay.
It's not in it.
So it's all about M.
I'm still jealous. That sounds awesome. I'd write a whole book about M's dog. I mean, I don't care.
Well, so that was the thing is I can't do that because M is a very different character than Bond.
Yeah.
So weirdly, all the things that would make it a quote unquote Bond story, I couldn't do. So then I don't know if will kind of relate to this, but if you take on an art job, there's some things you can't do. It might be the size of the page, or it might be because it has to be done fast. But generally, when you do an art job, there's restrictions of some kind. And what I like about writing is if I can find out what the restrictions are, I can work within that. But so having restrictions is good. So because I couldn't do James Bond in the Bond story, I had to kind of work a way around that and put M in. But basically, what I was told for the Bond story is it has to be an exotic location of some kind. And I kind of put that on its head because something about the north of Ireland is, it's part of the United Kingdom, but to many people in the UK, they don't really think about it. And so, I've been there, and it is actually quite odd. And you're going to another country that's part of the same landmass as you. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to see. And also it's got such a history of espionage and, double agents and spies and stuff. I'm like, this would be really cool. I'd love to see Bond in this scenario, but what about M? And then it all kind of came from there.
Oh, that sounds. You know what, man? Because I'm a big fan. You just sold a ticket. I'm going to go and read that book. On Comixology.
I don't think tickets is how you buy comic books.
No, you realise I was using that as a term, not.
I do. I was just taking the piss out of you.
Yeah. So I no, that sounds awesome because I love the world of Bond and I love the characters around him. M is a particular favourite because he's the headmaster that you love, but also don't like to be disciplined by.
Exactly. Yeah. So then the question is why is he so disciplined? Once you start looking at that character outside of instead of looking at Bond, why is he such a hard ass? And
now I want to know, Deck. Now I'm going to read the book.
Read James Bond M to find out.
Now I'm going to read that book.
Sold the shit out of it.
Yeah, you did. Well done. So that's really cool. So going back then to the beginning.
Sorry, to the original question about writing. Jesus Christ, I really went.
No, not at all. No. The question about writing was just. If you were thinking about doing that first, but the art is what I figured that would be the answer. You wanted to be an artist first and writer came second. So at what age did you decide you wanted to be a comic book artist?
I really hate to interrupt a megalomaniac when he's on a roll, but here's Web in Your Eye.